We just want to welcome everyone to this really special event with Carolina Ixta, San Leandro High School class of 2014, author, yay. Author of the book, Shut Up, This Is Serious. This event is presented by the San Leandro High School Library and the San Leandro Public Library. And I just want to do some quick acknowledgments before we get started. So first off, thank you to Carolina for choosing San Leandro High School as your first school visit to launch the book. As well as ensuring that as many books got into the hands of students. So for our lucky book winners, thank you, Carolina. Also, thank you to SLED for your support in helping us to purchase these books. Thank you to Portia, teen librarian of the San Leandro Public Library, for collaborating in planning the event. Thank you to Ms. Diodny, our library multimedia specialist. She did all the behind-the-scenes logistics. Thank you to Ms. Sinnott for being our #1 reading hype man. Thank you to our Project Lit and our Library Advisory Board volunteers. Our students are awesome. Thank you to our library TAs, Ms. Barloga and Silb, our district leaders and board trustees, and of course the teachers who brought your classes here. Thank you to you for showing your students that this could be them up here in the future.
Yes.
I'm going to hand it over to Portia, and then we're going to introduce and get started.
Good morning, everyone. I'm so grateful and excited to be here. I am Portia Carrier. I'm the teen librarian at San Leandro Public Library, and I hope that you all come and visit the public library sometime soon. Library cards are free, and they let you check out books, of course, but also board games. There's online tutoring help available from your house. There are computers you can check out. There's free printing, so all kinds of fun and exciting stuff at the library. We're here today because story is important, and story is powerful, and I think that this book in particular, Shut Up, This Is Serious, is such a special and powerful story, and I'm so grateful that Carolina approached us and that she has written this book and that she is here with us today. I feel just so privileged to get to sit in conversation with her and to hear about her work and her process. This book is not just exciting to us, it's been exciting to pretty much everybody. It's gotten fancy starred reviews in all of the important journals that review books. It's gotten picked for an Amazon Best Book of the Month, for an Indie Next selection, for a Junior Library Guild Gold Standard selection. So really a lot of people are acknowledging the power of this story. And so I hope that this event inspires you to read the book if you have not, and inspires you to think about your own story and telling your own story.
All right. Thank you, Portia. We have a special person to help us introduce Carolina today. So Mr. Doan is going to come up here and say a few words. Thank you, Mr. Doan.
Hello, everyone, and thank you again for coming. Lori thanked so many people, but obviously we should give a big hand to Lori Sasaki for organizing this. So you guys, our wonderful guest today was a student of mine over 13 years ago in my freshman biology class. I remember that fateful day when Carolina asked me to fill out some paperwork for the Scholastic Art and Writing Award competition. I knew I had to support this great venture of hers, so I agreed and was humbled that she had asked me. I'm truly glad I did, because not only did I knock down a hurdle for one of my students, but it allowed her to eventually win the gold award for her novel. In an interview with the local newspaper in 2013, Carolina was quoted saying, "Down the road, I would like to get something published." Weird, huh? But right now, it's just a hobby, and I like it that way. How cool is it that this day has already arrived? I'm here today with my college and career class, and I just can't help but think about how amazingly coincidental that I'm talking about vision, talent, passions, and dreams of the future. And here we are, lucky enough to have a person who pursued their talents and passions and had a vision that they predicted 10 years ago and made it come true. Carolina, I brought a few things today that I kept all these years to give you a little blast from the past. This, I don't know if you recognize it, is your first novel. You printed out a bunch of these and put it in binding yourself, and you gave me a signed copy. And with it, a thank you card from your senior year. I will not embarrass you today by reading it, but it is very heartfelt and wonderful, and I obviously still treasure it.
Yeah.
And then I'm wearing something under here that I want to, well, it's hiding him here. This is I've won a few medals in my day, but this is the biggest medal I've ever owned because thanks, 99.9% thanks to you. And I just got this for signing some papers that said she was awesome. So, and then this last piece of paper, I remember that day we're sitting together at the I think it was the City Hall meeting, and proclaiming that October 23rd, 2013 is Carolina Navarro Day in San Leandro. So congratulations on that. So Carolina, on behalf of everyone in this room, thank you for taking the time to come today and for writing an amazing book. That, again, you need to autograph before you leave today, because that's my copy you have right there. And I hope it will inspire another generation of readers, writers, and human beings. Personally, I want to thank you for being one of my students and adding me to the acknowledgments of both your first novel and this novel. And so you guys, let's welcome a hometown hero, Carolina Ixta.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, just to give you all a little bit of context about how the event's going to go, we are super excited to have San Leandro High School students Hasey and Alana in conversation with Carolina. So everyone send them your support and love. So they're going to be in conversation for a short bit in the beginning, and then we're going to save time for a Q&A at the end. So if you're thinking of questions as you hear about the book and about Carolina, there's some index cards that we'll have if you want to write your question down, and then we'll also have mics in the audience if you want to ask your question directly. So that'll be at the end. But we're so excited, so thank you so much. I'm going to turn it over to Carolina, who's going to share a little bit about her book.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. Before I start, are any of my students here? Could you raise a hand? I see a couple. Good morning. Where's Narayan and Darius in the crowd? Shout out, shout out. Thank you for coming. Yeah, my name is Carolina. I went here in high school. I graduated 2014. It's privileged to go to this high school. I hope you feel similarly privileged to go to school here. But I did write this book. If you have a copy of the book, I'm going to be reading a little bit. We're going to be on page 43. So I'll give you a second if you'd like to follow along. This book is about a girl named Belén Dolores Itzel del Toro. She's a senior in high school, and she's dealing with her dad who has abandoned the family, and I don't think she has the words for it, but she's really depressed. And in the same year, her best friend, who's a girl named Leticia, gets pregnant, and her best friend is her complete opposite. She's super nerdy, she's an AP student, she's incredibly Catholic, and so it's really shocking to everyone that she gets pregnant. And Belén is not applying into college. She has no ambition really in her future, but Leti really, really does. And her goal is to go to UC Berkeley. And she's writing her personal statement, which I'm sure many of you have written. And the scene I'm going to read from comes from like a workshop she's doing with an English teacher to ask, how do I write my personal statement? And she's essentially saying, for those of you who probably also wrote your personal statement, it's usually about like some great challenge you've overcome in life. And she's telling her teacher that she doesn't know what the greatest challenge in her life is. And Belén, who's the narrator, is like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. So we're on page, let's see, 43. 43 for those of you who want to follow along. So on page 43. I thought that was the stupidest thing I'd ever heard. But then Leti just emotionally vomited. She hasn't told anyone other than us and her ma about the whole thing. And once she started, she couldn't stop. rattling on about the first time and how he finished early and how I went with her to Planned Parenthood to get a pregnancy test for her because she was afraid to tell Quentin that her period wasn't late. It was just really light. And she read on WebMD about something called implantation bleeding and how she took the test in the bathroom of the Wendy's on International on our way home, and how she took the other one in the bathroom at Hueras, and how she made me keep both of the pea-saturated sticks because God forbid if her ma ever found them, and how I held them at an arm's length complaining that I was holding her pee, and how I had to dump them in a garbage can on East 13th, and how she threw up from panic in a garbage can on East 17th, and how she got slapped across the face when she told her ma, because how could her own daughter go behind her back and God's back and betray God in such a disgusting way, and how she's been wondering the same thing. If she loved God so much, why did she do this? And now she's scared because she's going to go to hell, but before even getting to hell, she's wondering how she is supposed to go to college and how she doesn't even know how to afford that, and how even though she's applied for scholarships, even if she got the money, she wonders how she will survive academically while caring for a baby if the baby will only be maybe 3 months old by the start of the first semester if she goes to a semester-based school, and only 4 months old if she goes to a quarter-based school, and she wants to go to a semester school because Berkeley is a semester school, and what if she wants to do a summer bridge program? What will she do then? I don't really feel like I belong in this conversation. I've heard it a lot. On the bus, in the hall, on the street, on the phone. So I'm sitting here and rereading the ingredient list on a mustard packet for my spicy chicken sandwich from the cafeteria. It's one of the only tolerable things this school provides. So your dad doesn't know? Miss Barrera asks. No, Leti says. My mom knows, but not my dad. Quentin nods. Her dad would not approve. What does that mean? Miss Barrera leans back in her seat, like he would ask you to terminate the pregnancy? Like abort the baby? Leti sniffs. Miss Barrera nods, pushing the tissue box closer to Leti. Yeah, like that. Leti shakes her head. No, my family would never let me do that. They're too religious. You'd be surprised, Miss Barrera says, her eyebrows raising gently. So what would he disapprove of? That you're too young? That you had sex before marriage? Quentin scoffs. I mean, I'm sure he'd be upset about all of that too. It's mainly because I'm Black. Miss Barrera sips her water and lets out a deep sigh, her chest deflating. Oh, it's about blanqueamiento. That's where I'll stop. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Hasey, and the first question I'm going to ask is that, as many people know in the audience, that you are an alumni of San Leandro High School, class of 2014. What are some aspects of the school, such as experiences or memorable people, that impacted your path to becoming an author and publishing this book? And what advice would you give to high school students who are hoping to also write a book in the future?
Yes, I did go to this high school. I went through the SLUSD track. So I went to Washington, and I went to Bancroft, and I went to San Leandro High. I think I feel really privileged that I went to this school, and I said that earlier. Like, I really hope everyone feels privileged, and if you don't, I really think this is a very unique school. Like, the diversity here is really unparalleled to any other school I've been to, any other high school I've ever visited. And I feel like I got a lot of support from teachers, and surprising support, like my biology teacher, my Spanish teachers, my history teachers were some of my favorite teachers. And I think I took my experience at this school and somewhat put it into the book. I think that's been a big question, is like, is the high school in this book based off of San Leandro High? In some ways, but not all, right? Like, I think the job of a writer is to take parts of their real life and put them into something, but also fictionalize them. There are terrible teachers in the book, there are wonderful teachers in the book, and I think I took my teachers and kind of combined them all to represent that. Teachers from here, teachers from middle school, elementary school, but particularly from college. I had some weird professors in college. But yeah, I think that's what really did it for me. I did write about the tracking system. This school is very, very different from when I went to high school here. Like, I went to high school here 10 plus years ago, and I think the district has done a lot to positively change the culture of the school. But when I went to school here, we did have those 3 tracks. It was AP, college prep and honors. And I noticed as I got older and begun studying educational theory, how different those tracks were and how I felt it was really unfair. Again, I think there's been a lot of remedying the situation, but I took that. For those of you who are interested in publishing a book, I think it's the most boring advice and the advice that nobody wants to take, but you just have to read so much, like more than you think you have to read. And it's interesting what is inspiring to me. Like, I read a lot of young adult fiction, I read a lot of literary fiction, I read a lot of poetry. I also read like an instruction manual when I'm fixing the washing machine, and it actually informs the way that I think. This morning I was listening to a Little Yachty album, and I was like taking down notes where I was like, man, he's really saying some interesting things. But I think opening and expanding your mind to absorbing culture from everywhere is really important. I get inspiration from like graffiti ads and like billboards, like all of the reading matters. Publishing a book is really, really, really hard, and part of the reason I wanted to come here before I went anywhere else to speak to students is because I remember really wanting to publish a book when I was, like Mr. Doan said, when I was like in high school, even when I was a kid. And when I got my book deal, I remember thinking immediately like, oh, well, that was just such an easy thing to do. Like, I immediately started discrediting my work. And I was up late one night and I was deep in Reddit, like, what are the statistical chances of publishing a book? Because I just couldn't. I was like, I guess anybody could do this. And when I say this, I say it to you so you understand, like, I didn't go to art school. I actively chose not to go to art school. I wanted to just be a student. My mom had talked to me about going to private school when I was like in middle school for high school, and I said no, like I just wanted to go to public school. And when I participated in things like the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards, I didn't realize that many people would see that as a deficit, like they would see that as something that wasn't positive. But I think going through this educational experience really lended me to a lot of privilege. And when I looked up those statistics, they said it's truly like if you don't have a leg into publishing, it's a 1 in a million chance. And the statistics narrow when you think about like, I'm Latina, my parents came here from a different country, and my parents didn't speak English when they came here. My grandparents, to this day, they don't know how to read. So when I think about all of that, and I think about where I am today, I mainly came here because I'm like, I think people need to understand that whatever it is you want to do, you can really do it. Like, I had no idea that the odds were so stacked against me until I had signed to HarperCollins, and one night I was up late. But it's so completely possible. Like, it's a 1 in a million chance I was able to do it. It took a lot of work and it took a lot of time. But it's the main reason why I wanted to be here, to tell people like it's completely, if it's not publishing a book, it's like you want to be in the NBA, you want to work for Apple, you want to get into Stanford, whatever it is, like it's so completely possible.
Thank you so much.
So in this book, Belen is on the college prep track, which is for students that need help with credits. Mm-hmm. She often came across a lot of discouraging teachers, and she didn't really feel motivation to graduate. Is this inspired by personal experience? And if so, how did you overcome that?
Yes, I was not a college prep student. I was an AP honors student in my time here. My mom was a school principal, so she really made sure I was on the correct track. But when I was, I think are they still called the A through G requirements to get into a UC? I was doing my A through Gs, and I had finished my credits early, so my senior year I was goofing off, and I don't encourage you do that, but I was goofing off tremendously, and I was just filling my classes because I had finished my credits. I was goofing off because I was a good student, okay? So my senior year I was like, you know what, I'm gonna take this whatever class with my friends, and we're gonna go, and we're gonna have a time. And I remember taking this one class, and it was a CP class, and my friends and I did nothing but watch movies in the class all day. And we started messing around, and I was like, yo, I bet you if we answered the questions, they were like documentaries plus questions, and we were writing nonsensical answers. I used to write the lyrics to the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air theme song just over and over and over and over again, and my teacher would go and just and she'd do whatever she was doing. And at the time, it was so funny. We were like, oh my God, we got away with it, right? But as I got older and as I became a teacher, I was like, that was a throwaway class for me where I was goofing off. That is some kids' full experience, like with every single class that they have. And if I had been in classes like that from my freshman year to my senior year, I would not have wanted to be there. Like I would have been like, if I can write the lyrics to a theme song, I just can go home. Belen is also a truant student, which means she's cutting class all the time, which is a big problem. Please don't do that. But I remember thinking about that and going, okay, so I was this AP kid, but I wanted to write an anti-hero, which was someone who's making all of the wrong choices to get to a climax and her like heroic arc. So for her, I wanted to really write her as a CP student who's like, these teachers don't care about me, why should I care about myself? And I think children are really apt to looking at the way adults perceive them and mirroring that. So it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you have a teacher who's telling you that you don't matter, it's something that you're going to believe. I was very privileged. I had fantastic teachers here, but I had discouraging teachers as well. Mainly in college, where I got to college and I thought that I was gonna have this really beautiful experience with all of my professors, but there were some professors who just weren't apt to providing support. So I wanted to take that, but make it palatable to young people and say like, there are kids who have that, I hope no one's having that experience here. Like I hope people know that there are teachers who are there to support them and see them grow. As you heard, one of my biology teachers was like the person who I was like, hey dude, I really wanna do this. Can you please sign this sheet of paper? And it seems like such a simple ask, but I'd ask someone else and they told me no. And I think about, I was 15, and I think about how getting a no, being a writer is getting a lot of no. You get no all the time. But had I been a very different student, I might have heard that no and been like, man, I'm really not cut to do this. But I remember I was walking from second to third period. I was going to Mr. Doan's class, and my application was due that Friday. I remember it was a Tuesday. And I was like, I have to figure it out. Like, I have to make that happen for myself. So I asked him, and when I went to the Scholastic building, they were shocked. They were like, we've never heard something like this. Your biology teacher is sponsoring your event. And I said, I'm just trying my best. But it did impact the way that I thought about Belen, because I was like, she has a really hard time with adults believing in her, and kind of then thinks about that in herself. Like, my dad clearly doesn't believe in me. My teachers don't believe in me. Why would I matter? She gets through it. But I know that's a very common experience. And if you're here and that's your experience right now with an educator or an adult in your life, like, there's definitely people who are there to support you. And I think she eventually realizes that by the end of the book. So I took all that and I tried to put it there.
As you mentioned, Belen is she cuts class, she has these CP classes, and then Leti, she's like an AP student, and she's in a completely different track. And something that makes Belen and Leti's friendship remarkable throughout the book is how they contrast each other. And I just wonder what drove you to write them in such a complementary form.
Yeah, there's a term in literature called doubles or foils, like where it's just your opposite. So when I wrote this book, I wanted the girls to be opposites. But there's many stereotypes for young Latina women, and I wanted them to work as opposites in that way. Belen physically presents as this very curvaceous girl, and I think the stereotype for Latinas who are pregnant specifically is that they're very promiscuous. And Belen, who has the body type for someone who would be typecast that way, has never had sex before. And then there's Leti, her best friend, who's super thin and super nerdy and goes to church every Sunday and ends up getting pregnant. I did that so that people would understand that the stereotypes associated for Latina women are just stereotypes. They're not necessarily reality. I also did it to talk about like the unsung heroes of female friendship. Like my best friend in high school, her name is Katie. We were totally opposites. Like I would order her food for her when we'd go to Starbucks because she was just too nervous. But it's one of the most beautiful friendships I've ever had, right? I wanted to make sure that we talked about the stereotypes for Latina women and just kind of turned them on their heads. And also understood the strange ways where you can find friendship. Usually it's like, you think you need to have a friend who has your same interests. Belen and Leti are completely different people and really see each other more like family.
A point that I really love that I think a lot of us can relate to is when Leti says about getting into college, I don't want to get in because I'm pregnant, I want to get in because I deserve it. And I think it speaks to how often people feel they need to sell a story to get in instead of getting in because they worked hard for it. Is this something you struggled with as well when applying for college?
Yes. For those of you who have applied to university, first of all, good job, and I hope you get into your top choice. But man, like, again, it took me to be in university taking these really fancy educational theory classes to understand that there was this whole system that was completely stacked against my favor, and I had no idea. When I wrote this story, or right before I started writing it, maybe 6 months before, Operation Varsity Blues had broken in the media, which, if you don't know, was this case studied by the FBI, like the FBI broke it, where these white rich celebrities, one of them being Lori Loughlin, who played Aunt Becky on Full House, were paying millions of dollars to get their children into schools like USC and Stanford and Berkeley. They were photoshopping their faces so it looked like they were athletes. Like, I think those girls were pretending to row crew. And at the same time, their daughters were like these socialites who are YouTubers and influencers saying things like, I just want to go to USC to party, like I'm not really here to study. And it made me so upset because I remember thinking about going to school here, and if someone here, in my time, if someone here had gotten into Berkeley or Harvard, it was the talk of the town, right? Like, we were like, damn, like you really did that. But then I realized that that's just not what other people, and when you get to university, you might realize what most people have to do. There was a lot that I learned about people who essentially pay their way into school, people who don't have to go through the same struggle, people whose hands are held as they're applying to university. And I was like, man, that's just so unfair. So when I wrote about these kids writing their personal statements, Leti Ali also is a character who was like, I'm trying to get into Howard or Berkeley because I'm really smart. Like, I don't want to get in because I've gone through a traumatic incident, but they have a teacher who's like, you want to know something? Like, it's an unfair system. They're only going to care if you tell them what you've been through. And it's a tension that is essentially discussed at the end of the book. This is no spoiler, but there's a Latino character who then tells Belen, your friend only got into Berkeley because she's pregnant. And I really wanted to discuss how we're sold that story, and then even people who are Latino, maybe even Black, internalize it and say, man, I only got here because I went through something terrible, not because I'm capable and smart. It lends to things like imposter syndrome, getting into a room and feeling like you do not belong there. Little do you know, like some of the people who are there paid their way into university, right? So I did want to talk about that. I think the process to applying to college is just so unfair, and I wish there was something I could do to fix it, but I think when we understand that there are systems against us, we're at least just more mindful about how they impact us personally. And if you're applying to school, I truly wish you the best of luck. It's a really unfair system. It's one that's possible to get through, but yeah.
Something that I absolutely love about the book is that throughout the book, you educate the reader with subtle connections to ethnic studies, and it's really beautiful the way that you connect this. And I know that not only are you an author, but you're an elementary school teacher, a bilingual ethnic studies teacher. Bilingual elementary school teacher. I wonder if these connections from common Latino stereotypes, you see them reflected on your own students at a young age of 5th or 4th grade. And if they are written into the book inspired by these characteristics that are reflected at such a young age. And I wonder, how do you address these topics in the classroom with your students?
Yeah, so for the last 4 or 5 years, I've been a fifth, now 4th grade bilingual teacher just down the street. And my first year teaching, I teach the bilingual track, so I was only teaching Latino kids at the time. I still am. And within the first few months, weeks maybe, I heard really like racist things coming out of their mouth, specifically about their Black peers. And when I would try to correct them, you know, they're young, they're like 9 or 10. They really had no idea what I was talking about. So then I would call parent-teacher conference, whatever. And I would say, hey, your student said this about their classmate, and it's really inappropriate and wrong. And the parents would similarly kind of look at me like, well, what was so wrong about what they said, right? So then I had a moment where I thought, okay, clearly this is learned behavior, like they're learning it from somebody else. And I had to really shift in the way that I taught to make sure we were talking about race critically. I started writing this book with the kids in the room. Like they were taking a STAR test and I got the idea and I wrote down the first maybe paragraph and I was like, oh my God, I think like I'm onto something. But I don't think I could have written it without having been their teacher. I don't think I could have thought about schools and these characters in the way without having been a teacher. And I think the way that I interacted with my students to hopefully make them think very critically about their own identity lended to the way that I wanted these characters to think about their identity. I had read many, many, many books about how Latinos, and I can speak specifically to the Mexican identity, how we're discriminated against specifically after the 2016 Trump election. But I had never read a book that discussed how we can also be very discriminatory and very racist. So in the terms of colorism, in the terms of anti-Blackness. So I wanted to weave it in as subtly as I could, mainly because I was like, man, because of the systemic barriers put in front of Latino kids to go to university, the largest of them being money, many of them may not go. So if I don't talk to them about these topics, I don't know if anyone else will. And I thought about that for my students, but I also thought about that when I was writing the book because I was like, well, if these kids are going to go to school, I also can't guarantee that they're going to be taking ethnic study courses. They might just be STEM majors or doing whatever else that they're going to do. So I wanted to at least write a book that would leave Latino readers specifically with a lot of questions about racial identity.
In the part where Belen is going out and she's straightening her hair, her mom walks past and says, "You don't have to straighten your hair for every event. Your curly hair is beautiful too." And I thought that was such a key thing to include because women of color often struggle with being accepting of our different hair textures. What inclined you to write about that?
Yeah, I know that's a larger thing in the Black community than it is in the Latino community. I mean, the Latino community as well, we have Afro-Latinos, mixed-race Latinos. We have an issue with race, I think, just generally. It can be presented in terms of skin color, but it's also in things like ethnic phenotype, like the size of your nose, the width of your eyes, the texture of your hair. And my life was always so easy. Everyone was like, "You have such beautiful, good hair," right? I have a sister who's older than me, curly hair. And people often thought she was Black. And I remember as a kid just watching her just like, you'd hear like the sizzle of the straightener like all day. And I think now she grew out of that, but I remember thinking like, as I wrote it, again, I'm not trying to be on a soapbox and lecture and be like, oh, you know, we have a caste system and here's how racism works and blah, blah, colonization and all this. I had to include it very subtly. And even for Latinas like Belen, who are not Black presenting, who are more white presenting, even for some of my students, picture day comes and it's like every other day I see them with curly hair. Picture day is like they have pin straight hair. And I think about the subtle messages that sends, you know, to them to be like, if you are presentable, if you're going to be photographed, if it's a special occasion, this part of you needs to change. And that's never been a problem for me, but I knew that that could be a problem for somebody else. So I wanted to include it in just like a passing way.
I also love how you demonstrated the connection between religion and sexual knowledge for youth through Belen and Leti. One of my favorite quotes includes, "For most traditional Mexican women, they don't have a birth control lesson in their bag. They have a Bible." And what motivated you to speak on this topic?
Yeah, as a teacher, I do teach health ed. And those of you who are in the room, I think you're very lucky to go to a school in California, in a very progressive school district, in a very progressive area of California specifically. There are children who walk through life without any understanding, not even of sexual health and reproduction, but of their bodies, period. So when I would teach health ed to my students, you have to send out this waiver that allows parents to opt out, right? And most parents and families who would opt out of the lessons were for religious reasons, and of course it's something that I have to respect. But there were many times that I had students, specifically girls, come up to me and they'd gotten their period for the first time and they had no idea what was happening. And I would understand because I grew up Mexican, I grew up Catholic, and it was just not something, my mom talked about it with me, but it was not something that was talked about generally, right? It was a very shameful topic. Belen has a parent who's gone to university who has sat down and talked to her about reproductive health. Belen's never had sex in her life. Leti has a parent who is incredibly, I would argue, oppressively religious and ends up pregnant. And when I wrote that line, I wanted to at least lend some empathy to Leti's mom, because Leti's mom, I would say Leti's parents in the book are somewhat antagonistic. They're like really, really, really mean to her. But her mom, like, to her credit, she also didn't grow up with a parent who was sitting down and having these critical conversations about bodies and sexuality with her. So she's just reproducing what she's been taught. I think, you know, as someone who grew up religious, as someone who still is religious, just in a very different way, growing up in the Catholic Church was something that was strange for me because I just noticed a lot of hypocrisy in it myself. And in the largest ways, it was with sexuality, where I was like, man, premarital sex is a no. But most of the, what I saw most, especially when I got to college, is the stereotype of like the promiscuous Latina woman. Came from understanding that people believe that Latinas are more apt to become pregnant when they're teenagers, which isn't necessarily true because they're more promiscuous. It's because a lot of us historically are Catholic, historically because of colonization. And when you're very Catholic and very traditionally Catholic, you do not talk about things like that. Which then lends, kids are gonna experiment and do what they're going to do, which is why I think it's so important. And again, you're privileged to go to a school in a district where they are at least teaching you, hey, this is what reproductive health is. For people who don't have that, they're going to experiment and do what they're going to do, but the consequences can be really, really, really different. Yeah, I think, yeah, we're out of time. Thank you for your questions. Please give them a round of applause. They did such a good job. I think we're opening up to Q&A on the floor. People are walking around with microphones if...
So we're going to have some of our volunteers. Thanks, you guys did awesome. We're going to have some of our volunteers come around with index cards. If you have questions, you can write them down on the index cards, and we'll also be walking through the audience with mics if you want to just say your questions directly. Yeah. You guys did so good.
They did so good, right? Yes, very natural.
Lori, we have our first question.
Thank you. I'm glad it felt comfortable.
Hi.
Oh, we have a question. Let's listen intently, please.
Hi. My name. Oh shit. Hi. My name's Sahana.
Hi.
I think it was really. I really like what you're talking about. I haven't read the book yet because I didn't win the lottery, but I do want to read it once it's available in the library. And what's it called? I think personally, I'm really interested in like becoming a writer, but there's like a bunch of things like in the back of my mind that I have, like I'm scared about, like what if it's not the career path for me, like what if it's not the right major, like how am I gonna make money off of it? So what made you choose writing over like everything? Well, I mean, I know you're still a teacher, but like what made you really like passionate about writing?
Good question. You can definitely make a living as a writer. I think that's something that people should know. A lot of my students are like, are you gonna quit teaching? Yeah, you know, actually I think pretty soon, but you should know that you can, for real, you can make a living off of it. What made me want to, I knew I wanted to be a writer when I was 8 years old. Like, I remember I did a contest with Reading Rainbow. I was at Washington Elementary School, and my third grade teacher, Miss Katz, was like, I think you should do this. You clearly like doing this. So I've just known since I was 8. I was like, this is what I'm gonna do. They talk about manifestation, right? I was like 8 years old, 20 years later, here I am. But yeah, I just always knew, and the more I read, the more I was like, oh, I could do this. I could do this. And I think at some point, that level of confidence comes from just reading and reading and reading. But no, you really can do it. It is just, I will tell you, a relentless profession to go into. It's a lot of no. I got many no's. This was the 7th book I attempted to write. This was not the first, right? Mr. Doan has a copy of not even my first, my 3rd, right? So yeah, it's possible. Keep reading, keep writing. The writing will be bad. The first draft of this book is awful, and God bless everyone who read it because it was terrible. But it takes a lot. It just takes a lot of work. Thank you for your question.
Hello. My question is because I remember you mentioned that you started writing it when you were your kids were doing a test.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask, when did the title come into the writing process?
The title, I actually didn't title it. A friend of mine titled it. We had we had been listening to that Drake album, Honestly Nevermind, and I was like, that should have been my title. And we were spitballing ideas, and he was like, what if you want to keep the comma? The title came maybe a year and a half pre-pub, and I'm working on my second book right now, and I'm having a meeting on titles tomorrow, a year and a half ahead of time. So it's a year and a half before the book is published. I did not title this book. A friend of mine titled it, and then the marketing team at HarperCollins was like, we want this title. I went through 2 or 3 different titles before they picked that one. Thank you for your question.
Another question back here.
Hi, I was just wondering how long the process of making this book took.
Can you raise your hand? I'd like to at
Right
least.
here.
Oh, hi. How long it took?
Yes.
Every book is different. I started writing this my first year teaching. I remember the day. It was November 6, 2019. I remember being like, I figured something out this day. It took me a year and a half to finish writing the draft, but I was also full-time teaching. Then the pandemic hit. Then I was at home. So I finished it July of maybe 2021. And then it took, so from the day I started writing it, November 2019 to pub day, it took about 4 years. But that's also because I needed to get an agent. I revised it, I had a mentor, I had an agent, and then my agent sold it, then I met with my editor, it took a while. I'm now writing my second book. I wrote that book in 3 months. So it, is different for every person. I have a friend she is so talented. I think she's written 5 books this year, all novels. So everyone works at a different pace. This was a slower pace, but I also didn't have a contract. So there was no one breathing down my neck to tell me this is due by this date. Everything is different. I know some folks participate in NaNoWriMo, which is where you write a book in a month. I did that this June. Everything lends differently. So this one took a year and a half to write, 4 years to publish. My next one, it'll be shorter, but that's because I already have a team. So everything is different. Definitely go at your own pace, especially for your first one. Thank you for your question. Hi.
To stand up? Okay, over here. My question is, how did you get your own day in San Leandro?
How did I get my own day?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't decide. Mr. Doan emailed me, and he was like, hey, you were invited to the city council meeting. So was I, and I went, okay. I would have worn a totally different outfit had I known that day. I remember like rolling out of bed and being like, I guess I have to go to this. I was 17, and we went and we were standing there and he whispered and he was like, hey, they're giving you a holiday. Also, he didn't mention he got a holiday too, okay? So it was both of us. And I remember just being like, what? I was so shocked. I had nothing to do with it though. Shout out to the city council that year. Thank you for your question.
I have a note card question. What was the first thing that came to your mind when making Shut Up, This Is Serious?
So the book started when I was actually an undergrad. I was 18. I was at UC Santa Cruz. I was incredibly homesick. Santa Cruz is not very far from here, but it's very, very, very different. And I had been writing these stories about these Latina girls, same girls, but they were narrated in opposites. So Leti was my protagonist and Belen was her best friend. And I could not relate to Leti in the same way. So when I was able to flip them, I just remember thinking, the first thing I thought was, if I'm gonna flip my characters, I wanna flip all expectations of them, which is how we got into the conversation about stereotypes. So I remember going, everything that you would anticipate for this girl to do, she's going to do the opposite. That was the first thing I thought. Thank you for your question. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Akila, and I was just wondering, do you think that the way people of color are brought up in school affects how they experience high school? For example, maybe the way that teachers talk to them, the way that they view their community around them, or just things of that nature.
Do you mean white people in comparison to people of color?
Yeah.
Is that your question? Okay. Yes, but I think that's also something that's unfortunately ubiquitous through life. I think it colors your experience in school for sure, but it's unfortunately something that will color your perception or your experience through life. But absolutely, I think teachers who are amazing and profoundly cognizant of their own identities don't do that. It's, you know, some of the best teachers I had, I'm like a Latina girl, right? They very much treated me as if I was anyone else. But unfortunately, I think racism is pervasive and it definitely impacts a lot of the experiences people, specifically students of color and Black students, have in school. Thank you for your question.
Hello. Oh.
Hi.
Hello. My name's Jose Pelayo.
Hi, Jose.
Remember?
Yes,
Hi.
of course I remember you.
Thank you. Thank you. I had a question.
Yeah.
What made you pick the plot for the book Oakland, California?
Yeah.
As,
Guys,
like-
Jose was in my first class. Isn't that crazy? Woo! Shout out, Jose. Oakland, yeah. I grew up in Fruitvale as a kid, and I ended up at San Leandro because we lived like right on the border between Oakland and Fruitvale, or I'm sorry, Oakland and San Leandro. So when I wrote the book, I was so homesick, and I was like, man, I just want to go home. I don't want to be here. And I knew that was going to be the setting. And the Bay Area, I don't know about recently, but in the last 10, 15 years has taken a turn in the way that it's perceived because we had this huge tech boom. But when I was a kid and I would tell, or my family would say like, oh, we live in Oakland, people would be like, oh, like, are you okay? And I'd be like, yeah, no, actually, I'm fine. And I didn't understand that people were perceiving the community negatively until I was older. When I went to college and I would tell people, oh, my family's from Mexico, but my family's from Oakland. And they would similarly do a double take of like, are you okay? So when I chose the setting, I was like, it's not gonna be Oakland, it's gonna be East Oakland, it's gonna be Fruitvale specifically, because I had not yet seen a story that had taken place in Fruitvale that was about a Latina girl. I'd seen like a Sorry to Bother You or Fruitvale Station. So I wanted to do that, and I also wanted to depict Oakland in a very protective way of like, it is dangerous. Yes, cars get broken into all the time, whatever. It's also like very, very beautiful, and we have such a beautiful immigrant community. We have such beautiful diversity. So I knew I wanted to convey that in the book as well. Thank you, Jose. Does anyone else have a question?
We have a question over here.
There's one. Oh, yeah. Hi.
Did you mirror the characters off your own high school experience?
The characters or the plot?
Yeah, the characters and the book.
The characters, yes, a little bit. Like I said, I had a best friend in high school who was so shy. She still is. Like I saw her maybe a month, 2-3 weeks ago. And still, she's really shy. She's really thin. Like I remember thinking about that and being like, in my head, I just remembered a lot about having her as my best friend and having to order food for her because she was just too nervous. I definitely put that in there. In terms of my high school experience, yes and no. Belen, the protagonist, is like flunking out of school. The major plot point in the book is she's like not going to graduate high school because she's failed so many classes, which for the teachers in the room know that's like, they've made it really hard to not graduate high school. So she's really underperforming. That was not my experience at all. So yes and no, definitely with my friendships, definitely with, you know, there's a fantastic teacher in the book named Miss Barrera. I took all of the great teachers I had and kind of combined them into one character. I would say more in the characters than in the plot. Thank you for your question.
Hi. I noticed after the dedication you included a quote from Ocean Vuong and a verse from the Book of Ruth, and I was wondering what media that you like consumed, or like what books, what movies, what shows you watched and read while you were reading this, and if any of them were like inspiration to write certain parts.
Well, it's a very good question. Thank you. Yes, I used an excerpt from an Ocean Vuong poem, one of my favorite poems. It's called Someday I'll Love Ocean Vuong. And then I quoted the Bible as well. Religion was a really big part of the book, so I thought that made sense. Ocean Vuong is one of my favorite writers ever. I was consuming a lot of media. I was consuming a lot of music. I listened to an album every single day, every day. Today was Little Yachty, everybody. But every day I listened to a new album. At this time, I was thinking a lot about my childhood. I wrote about 102.9 KBLX quite a lot in the book because that's what I listened to growing up. In terms of playlist, I was doing a lot of Rosalia and Kendrick Lamar and Little Brother and Beyonce, of course, and Solange. Maybe Slum Village. I listened to a lot of music, so that was it. Movies, less so. Again, like whatever took place in Oakland. Books, lots of them. I did The Poet X. Ghost by Jason Reynolds was like the largest inspiration for the book. I Am Not Your Perfect Mexican Daughter by Erika L. Sanchez. There's a book called Killing and Dying by Adrian Tomina. It's a graphic collection of short stories. That was big. Book of poetry by Dinesh Smith called Homie. I'm thinking of what else. I think those were the big ones. And I used Killing and Dying's cover as the reference for the cover of the book. Yeah. Thank you for your question. Hi.
My question basically is, are any of the characters, were they originally for something different? Because I'm writing something right now, and all of the characters came from completely different things.
Mm-hmm.
Are any of the characters just
Are they different from what I originally had them?
Yeah.
Yes. Again, in the early iterations of the book, Leti was the protagonist, and I just can't imagine that as the book today. In original drafts, there's a character named Alexis. He had a younger sister. There's a rule in writing called kill your darlings. I was like, yeah, she does not need to be here. So we cut her completely. Ali's character was very different. He was very, very different in the early iterations. And Quentin's character was very different. Quentin is Leti's boyfriend. I met with a sensitivity reader. I had a lot of people read the book, and they were like, he's too passive. So I had to make sure to give him more of an actionable arc and plot. Belen was pretty much, Belen in early iterations was a little too mature for a 17-year-old girl. So I made her make very questionable choices that would reflect and mirror more of a 17-year-old experience. Yeah, everything is subject to change, as you write, so definitely change if you need to. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi, Miss B.
Hello. I really love the cover.
Oh, yay.
And I was wondering how you came up with the idea of the cover.
Mm-hmm.
And you really don't see the faces, which
Yes.
I like, because I'm thinking, that's me.
Mm-hmm,
Or that could be me.
Mm-hmm.
So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the cover.
Yes, the cover was really important. I feel really fortunate that my team at Harper asked me what I wanted for the cover. For a lot of authors, they just kind of give you whatever you've got. So I met with my team. I had to put together a mood board. And again, I used Killing and Dying. If you should read the book, it's so good. By Adrian Tomina as a large inspiration. And we got this artist. His name is R. Kaku Johnson. He is so cool. He is like a viral New Yorker cartoonist. So he was a really big get. But we got him to do it. And I, in the mood board, put a bunch of BART stations. I didn't know what I wanted. I just knew that. I wanted the setting to be present. So he gave me 4 different covers, and then I took them to school, and I had my students vote. And I was like, okay, you guys know nothing about what I'm doing, but please vote on what you think would be your favorite. And they all voted majority for this one. So then I met with my design team and I said, I don't want a face on my book, which was really hard. We got like a profile, but in YA, which is the genre of the book, young adult, you usually have a face and then text. I was like, I don't want that, but we got a middle ground. And then for color direction, I remember saying, I want like the We Believe Warriors era colors on the cover. So I said, not yellow, I want like an orange and blue, and they were able to do that. I actually had a lot of direction for the cover, but it's unlike most YA book covers, which is what I wanted, and I feel really lucky that we got him as an artist and that my team even asked me what I wanted.
2
more questions.
Got one here.
Good. Hi.
What's an advice you would give to kids who struggle with like credits and stuff like that, or like with the same problems that your friend struggled with?
Advice I have for students who are struggling with the same problems?
Yeah.
That the characters are struggling with?
The friend, the
Oh, Leti?
Yeah, Leti, yeah.
Oh, wow. Leti is a really interesting character because she has a backbone and an ambition. I think she's presented as a very passive character. To a close reader, and maybe because I'm the author, I would say she's one of the most active and important characters in the book. And in the beginning, she's really quiet. She lets life kind of happen to her. And at the end, or toward the 3rd act, she really is like, oh, I'm in charge here, and I need to do something different with my life. If you read the book and you're in a situation similar to Leti's, which is what I would argue a really abusive home situation, Leti finds a lot of refuge in her friend, but also in a teacher. So she talks to a trusted teacher who helps her out quite a bit. So I would say find an adult. And I know you guys get tired of that answer, but it's so true. More than your friends, find a trusted adult who you really trust, who can give you some guidance, because she's going through a really nasty situation. I think there's one. Oh, yes.
What was your favorite part of writing the book?
My favorite part of writing the book?
Yeah.
Yeah. Setting it in Oakland. That was my favorite part. Thank you.
All right, maybe one more.
There's one over here.
Oh my gosh, two. We have like 3 minutes left, y'all. Naya, just stand up and say it.
Oh, hold on. Yes.
Naya, go.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Naya first. Okay, thank you. How did you get motivation to like write your book? Like, did you go somewhere specifically? Was it like your room, or did you go to like a cafe, or was it at school?
I write in my bed, which is really bad. I don't recommend doing that. I now write in the living room to have a better work-life balance, but I wrote this almost entirely at home and sometimes at work. Yes, last question.
Okay. What do you think would be a good piece of advice for other young writers like most people here, including myself? What do you think would be a good piece of advice?
You need to read 3 times as more as you write. Like, you need to read way more than you are writing. I can't emphasize that enough. You need to read so much till your eyes hurt, till you're tired. I read aloud. I read all the time. Audiobooks count. They count. Graphic novels, they all count. You just need to read, and then you're going to write something so terrible, and you just need to keep going and work through it. Thank you for your question. Thank you all for coming.
Can we, yes, warm thank you to Carolina and our student moderators. We have, and thank you to all of you too, we have 20 copies of her book for checkout in the library. 14 are already gone, so, but maybe you can ask your friend who won the raffle if you can
Thank you
borrow
for
their
coming. Go Pirates.
book. Yay,
You can do anything. Please do it.